Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Run It Back, the show where we try to get things right the second time. In today's episode, we're going to be going over a traditional draft that I personally did the other day. Really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun. Ended up going 2-1 in a very, very close game, match 2, that went all the way down to the wire, top decking things, and unfortunately we couldn't get there, but 2-1 was perfectly fine. I was pretty happy with that and really enjoyed the draft as a whole. As we dive into Pack 1, Pick 1, you can see obviously we opened up one of the biggest bombs of the set in Keys of the Hellraiser. You pretty much just need a singular crime trigger to make this pay off, and if you can get 2 or 3, it's incredible. There's also a couple of random zombies and skeletons around, so giving those things 1-1 in Menace is kind of a big deal, so we'll look to pick those up. I'm pretty tough not to play black or at least some sort of 4-5 color strategy to make sure this thing works because it is the nuts. After that, of course, we're looking for Back for More, Prairie Dog, Repulse, This Town Ain't Big Enough, Throw from a Saddle. These are all fantastic, fantastic cards. Even happy to see things like Geyser Drake, Steer Clear, Trick Shot. Those are perfectly fine wheels that we'll look for the second time around. Pack 1, Pick 2, we've got a couple of options here in the Pillage the Bog, which would help find Giza faster, which I thought was pretty interesting. We also have things like Bristleback Sentry to elongate the game, but Rictus Robber is a phenomenal card that I really enjoyed. Plot 3 just for a 4-3 is great because it comes down pretty early. It really allows you to make your turn 4s heavy, or it allows you to use your turn 4 to plot something else like a Spinewoods Paladin while not losing out on tempo here. So that's great. And then, of course, if you ever happen to end up getting the trigger off of it, then you get 2 zombies. Thought that played really well with the idea of Giza having +1/+1 for zombies. So we pretty much easily took the Rictus Robber, stayed in black, happy about it. Pack 1, Pick 3, we saw a couple really powerful cards here in the Congregation Griff, the Spinewoods Armadillo, Cactarantula, and Raven of Fell Omens. Of course, the Raven of Fell Omens, very, very good, works well with crime, is another crime payoff, that plays really well, but the Spinewoods Armadillo just being a huge body, we did see a Back for More, I believe, in Pack 1, Pick 1, so God forbid that should wheel. The Spinewoods Armadillo and Giza would be phenomenal things to pass by. Cactarantula kind of fits in the same category as the Spinewoods Armadillo, but doesn't have the early game nor the Ward 3, like it just is a similar but not as good card. So took the Spinewoods Armadillo, happy to see this one. This also plays well in a 5-color shell. So if we go down that route, this is great. Pack 1, Pick 4, we looked at a Consuming Ashes, as that's going to be a crime trigger for Giza. Looked at a Festering Gulch, as that plays well there. But having the idea of a Servant of the Stinger, doing a little crime, and then picking up your Giza, and then, being able to play it the following turn was just too much. It was super good early, super good middle. It also plays really well about potentially plotting your Rictus Robber, then the following turn you commit a crime, connect with Servant of Stinger, sacrifice it, tutor up, then you get your zombie here, and everything just kind of plays well. Notably, it's also an outlaw if that ever decides to matter for synergies. Pack 1, Pick 5. I did look at this Astra Cornucopia. I thought it was definitely worth it and something to consider, but I think the Hard-Bristle Bandit kind of plays a very similar role, but is a whole turn sooner, right? So being able to play the Hard-Bristle Bandit onto, untap it, with crime triggers or whatever really allows you to end up making 2 spells per turn work very easily. This Cornucopia is going to be a little bit more of a later game. The 1 life kind of doesn't matter too often until it's, 3, 4, 5, 6 life, but I think just being able to attack in for 1 is a little bit better off than the gaining 1. Now, if this Hard-Bristle Bandit wasn't here, and I'm looking at things like Binding Negotiation, Vault Plunder, or Astral Cornucopia, I'm likely to take the Cornucopia, but I think if you're comparing these 2 cards, I want the Bandit sooner. Pack 1, Pick 6. This was a little bit of a down pack for us, as I'm not taking things like Boombox. We could have looked like Decisive Denial, but this Patient Naturalist just allowed us to kind of stay in this 5-color potential shell with the Bandit, the Armadillo, and now the Naturalist really helping fix our mana, making sure we hit our land drops. Pack 1, Pick 7, we picked up a Desperate Bloodseeker. I could see a Binding Negotiation as that plays well early, also as a trigger for Giza, even when there's nothing in hand. But we went with the Desperate Bloodseeker mainly because, God forbid, we end up targeting our opponent to mill 2 cards. If that's making zombies, that's great. But just a little bit of lifelink, the trigger, we're in green-black. I figure we pick up a Rutstein at some point. This just is a great curve filler. Pack 1, Pick 8, we were past Abrupt Decay, and this is at the point where I knew that we were here. Like, an Abrupt Decay, this is a great, great card. It plays really well in crime. It's cheap. It helps go long. It also takes care of a lot of different things in the format, and it can't be countered of all things, which is not too terribly relevant here, but if it is relevant, it's huge. So, picking this thing up was phenomenal. Everybody at the table passed it, so we'll go ahead and slam that into our deck. Pack 1, pick 9. We were looking at a Corrupted Conviction. I wasn't too thrilled with that sort of thing. It does play well with the Rictus Robber, but as of right now, we didn't really have anything to sacrifice, and Green-Black doesn't have a whole lot of token generation as it is. So we took the This Town Ain't Big Enough. It was pretty easily splashable if we wanted it to. Could also end up picking up things like Gisa after they pay the ward cost, or like our Rictus Robber or something like that can save things from removal spells, or God forbid, eventually, if we have a board stall, we can end up bouncing 2 of our opponent's things and likely swinging in for lethal. Pack 1, pick 10, we did have a Buzzard. I'm not too thrilled in this one, but, plot 2 is pretty cheap, pretty low cost, so not unhappy to see it. I'm just not thrilled. Pack 1, pick 11. We're looking at an Overzealous Muscle, which I've been pretty low on. It's a fine card, nothing too crazy about it, but this Take the Fall kind of goes well with this Town Ain't Big Enough, and the fact that it is a dirt cheap crime, as well as, can win you a combat or 2. Pack 1, pick 12, we have a Varmint. This is just great to have a 2-drop that also could be a crime trigger. Trained Airings came around, which I thought was incredible, but we just slided that into the sideboard, and then a Mountain moving on. Pack 2, pick 1. We were really looking at a couple different cards here. Double Down is something worth splashing if you think you're going to end up doing well with things like the Rictus Robber. God forbid you have like a Blood Hunter to go along with it. But I didn't think that we really had anything super crazy right now, because even if you copy the Gisa, it doesn't do anything. One of them goes to the graveyard. Then I looked at Clear Shot, which is a fantastic removal spell and a crime trigger as well. But we ended up on Blood Hunter just because this card cares about crimes. It pays off for crimes, but it's also a crime enabler. This is going to be a deck that likely goes long, and it's going to have 8 mana at some point, so activating once on our turn and activating once on an opponent's turn means that we do get 2 crime triggers. There's very few opportunities to do crimes on your opponent's turn, so utilizing this, I think, plays really well. So we're really happy to pick this one up. Just unfortunately sad to see some of these other cards sort of go by. Pack 2, pick 12. Kellen joins up as 2 off colors, so I don't think we were going to do that. We could look at a Gigapede, but we did have both Gisa and Spinewind's Armadillo, plus we didn't have any fixing yet. So taking a look at this Soured Springs, I would play this in a green-black deck only. We also had these 2 blue cards that maybe if something like Bonnie Paul shows up, we're going to end up splashing blue. I didn't mind that at all. This Dance of the Tumbleweeds also plays well, but being able to end up, utilizing one of your 17 land slots for an upgrade looks really good in the face of having to use one of your 23 non-land slots. Pack 2, pick 3. Mana Drain is a phenomenal card, and I don't doubt that maybe we could have splashed it, particularly off the back of the Soured Springs, but I just didn't think that we were going to be doing a whole lot with the mana right away, because in order to end up casting our big things, we'd have to have Mana Drain on double blue, plus either double black for Gisa or double green for the Spinewind's Armadillo, and I just didn't think that that was always going to be there. Early in the format, I would have snapped this off, but, just Counterspell is okay. It's good. Like, don't get me wrong, it's good, but it's just not that super bomb that I thought it might be. So sticking in black, having an extremely good removal spell here, which works really well with the crime that we have. It makes a 1/1. I just thought that this was going to be better for our deck. I'd be really interested to see what you think about this pick, so let me know in the comments below about passing Mana Drain, Pack 2, pick 3. Pack 2, pick 4, we do have a Shoot the Sheriff, and although this was incredible, in previews sort of thing, there's just a lot of mercenaries. As we take a look at what's in the rest of the pack, we've got Outlaw here, Outlaw there, and of course, Obika also an Outlaw, but doesn't really see a whole lot of play, so you're pretty much stuck with certain black cards, and then some green and white cards that just don't always play, right? Things like Armadillo, it plays really well against. But I do like having one. I like picking it up in pick 4. This is a crime trigger that just works really, really well. So happy to see this one. Not as thrilled as we originally were. Pack 2, pick 5. This was a really interesting pick that I thought. We looked at this Avarice, which, we could end up having our opponent draw 3 cards and lose 3 life, as well as make, a crime trigger there. That's definitely worth something. Also can tutor up things like Gisa, but we ended up going with this Patient Naturalist on the idea that we could possibly still continue to splash, and Avarice doesn't really allow for that. I was also a little concerned that we didn't have any Ravens yet. We didn't really have any way to gain life, so this idea of losing 3 life to draw 3 cards was a little scary to me in this moment, so we took the Patient Naturalist. Looking back on this, I probably would still take the Avarice, because the games that were close were not the ones that we got run over. The games that were close were the ones where they went long and we lost things to do. We just didn't have the stuff. Pack 2, pick 6, we were rewarded with a Raven. I'm playing 3, 4, 5 of these in every single one of my black-green decks. The crime decks, these are great. Love to see them. I've been pretty low on Free Strider Commando. This is more of a filler card. I'd much rather things like Rictus Robber, as that just plays so much smoother. Pack 2, pick 7. I thought a Dance of the Tumbleweeds just played well. We could look at a Snakeskin Veil, especially after having things like Gisa and Spinewoods Armadillo. These are great things to protect with your Snakeskin Veil. But I wanted to end up getting to these things a little bit quicker. And so Dance of the Tumbleweed also is a payoff for having lots of mana. It gets you your mana, or it pays off for having lots of mana. I thought it was great. Sandstorm Verge. This one was a card I was really happy to pick up at Pack 2, pick 8. Not only is this a desert for things that care about desert, even though we don't have too many of those, it's a repeatable crime trigger. Now, notably, I lost a game, even though we won that first match. I lost one of our games in that match because I didn't realize that this was activate only as a sorcery, so it is not an instant speed crime trigger. But, removing a blocker, particularly when we have things with Menace, or particularly when we have like big things that they're going to want to double block, this plays really, really well. Happy to see this Sandstorm Verge and pick it up here. Pack 2, pick 9. Wasn't thrilled with any of these things. We could have taken Gold Rush, I suppose. Unfortunately, the Soured Springs, the Dance, the Clear Shot, and the Double Down all left. Some of these things we kind of expect, but, seeing that both the Soured Springs and the Dance of the Tumbleweeds gone was a little unfortunate, as well as the Vault Plunderer. Just didn't happen to work out that way. I'm not that thrilled with Gold Rush. I thought Demonic Ruckus maybe allows us to end up getting in a little bit more so with things like the Spinewoods Armadillo or the Rictus Robber, but we're likely not splashing it. Pack 2, pick 10. I wasn't thrilled with the failed fjording. We weren't really necessarily playing blue, so we just picked up 20 gems. Pack 2, pick 11. Nothing really here for us, and this pack really dried up quickly. So I'm not really certain if things just weren't really open, or if maybe somebody else shifted into green or black. But Pack 2, the end of Pack 2 dried up pretty quick. We did take our 20 gems out of Obika, and then we did get an Overzealous Muscle if we needed to play it, and finally end up with the Forest. Moving on to Pack 3, pick 1. This one was another really interesting pick. We ended up taking the Unfortunate Accident because I thought this was a great card, really happy with it. Certainly can't turn it down. Satoru, I didn't think was really worth the splash because we only really had this one plot card here and not a whole lot else to make that work. So I didn't think that was really worth it. And then, of course, we have Crime Punishment. So for those of you who can't read sideways, the crime side splashes white and says put target creature or enchantment card from an opponent's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Very reasonable, but more than likely we're playing this for the punishment side, which is destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with value X. So this is not a board wipe. This is not a pernicious deed where it's X or less. And if that was it, it'd be a slam dunk. Let's pick that. But it's exactly X. So you need to do 3 mana to kill all 1 drops. You need 4 mana to kill all 2 drops. And that's fine. I thought it was fine. It definitely allows you to keep your board while destroying, the important things on your opponent's side of the board. But I just thought that, this also is not a crime trigger, whereas this is, and that was important to us with the Raven and the Gisa. And I thought this card was just as good as this punishment card, and maybe I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments if I've completely botched this draft with the mana drain and the crime punishment. But I thought this was a safe pick that we were going to have a very good deck with, even if we have either of these cards. Pack 3, pick 2. I was really happy to see a Skullduggery. I wouldn't have minded a Bandit's Hall. This Jagged Barons, these are fine, but Skullduggery, 1 mana crime trigger, just plays so well, especially with cards like Bloodhunter, because not only does it get the +1/+1 from the Skullduggery, it also gets the +1/+1 from the Bloodhunter, and that just plays so well. So I was really happy to see Skullduggery, really happy to pick it up early. Pack 3, pick 3, we did get a Spinewoods Paladin. I thought that was great. I would consider to map the Frontier just because we could end up getting out to our Gisa and our Spinewoods Armadillo a bit later, but the Spinewoods Paladin sort of replaces the Overzealous Muscle that's still sort of hanging around in the deck, gains 3 life, stabilizes, phenomenal card. Pack 3, pick 4, we were past another Blood Hustler, and this was incredible, so we picked this one up really fast. Unfortunately, we weren't able to end up getting this Skullduggery, I don't believe. Lush Oasis, another great pickup, even though it's an off-color Desert, still would have played it, but Blood Hustler, phenomenal pickup. This is exactly what we want to be seeing. Pack 3, pick 5, we looked at a Cacturantula, we looked at a Pillage of the Bog, we looked at a Raven, and maybe as I'm looking at this again, maybe I do want this Raven, maybe I do want the Pillage of the Bog this time around, but we picked the Cacturantula mainly just because it was another fat thing to do with our mana, and we had 2 Blood Hunters and a Raven already on 2, plus this Harbristle Bandit. Like, we had things to do on 2 mana, so I wasn't that concerned with my early game. Maybe the Pillage of the Bog means that we end up getting this Gisa, but I took this Cacturantula just because it was a good reacher, has that pseudo ward ability, and it overall just plays well. Pack 3, pick 6, nothing really here for us. We took this Crom mainly just out of spite, I suppose. We could take this Force Retribution or maybe seize the secrets, but I'm not playing any of these cards. Pack 3, Pick 7, we did have a Treasure Dredger, which I thought was a pretty good one. We could have splashed something like Baron, but we don't have that many token creators outside of the new Treasure Dredger that we just had. Also, looking at this Rooftop Assassin in hindsight, that's a crime trigger. We already have lots of 2-drops, so maybe we should have ended up playing this Rooftop Assassin because it just sort of plays well with having little things on the board, and also is a crime trigger for when that works. Pack 3, Pick 8, we did have this Cactarantula, so unfortunately, looking back, we probably could have taken this Pillage the Bog or the Raven, knowing that this Cactarantula was coming, but unfortunately, we did not know that. I also considered looking at the Skullduggery, but I thought that we had a lot of early removal as it was, and this isn't necessarily a removal as it is so much a crime trigger and a combat trick. So based on our game in hand win rates there, you can see the mathologists over at 17 Lands suggest that Cactarantula is a better pickup than Skullduggery, so maybe we end up getting there on that, but just with the way that our deck is looking, I think that either of these picks could be fine. Pack 3, Pick 9, we could have taken a little Satoru action for the gems, but I thought this Forlorn Flats was just going to be a free crime trigger. I thought that played out really well. Key to the Vault for some gems here. Thunder Salvo, I suppose. We ended up getting a Skullduggery here late in the pack, so I was really happy to see that. A Visage Bandit, and of course ending with a Swamp. Taking a look at the deck, we're very heavy early on, and then of course having some late game as well. Notably, this turns into a land, but as we start to take out some of our spree cards, this Dance of the Tumbleweed is a 6-drop. Hopefully these Cactarantulas are 5-drops. This Spinewood Paladins plots on 4, Brick Robert plots on 3, and these things are either 4 or 5, so it kind of curves out quite a bit better than it originally looks. Separating our non-creature spells, we pretty much just have removal spells, which is 4 or 5 of them, some combat tricks, and then of course a one big threat and fixing here in Dance the Tumbleweed. All of our other cards up here are going to be crimes or crime payoffs, which I thought played out really well. This just was a really synergistic deck. Looking back on it, this Treasure Dredger probably wasn't that exciting. The second Cactarantula being a Pillage the Bog probably would have been good, and then we ended up playing this Black Snag Buzzard, which I was pretty unhappy with. We could have looked at maybe playing some of these other cards like Visage Bandit, This Town Ain't Big Enough, but I didn't think that the blue splash was all that necessary. Even though we had this Soured Springs, I thought this just played out. We had enough power here as it sits. So if you want to have your deck featured on Run It Back, feel free to send me an email at runitbackmtg@gmail.com or a message in Discord with the 17 Lands data. We'll go ahead and take a look at it and let you know what I think. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will talk to you soon.